Judith, you're muted.
I'll start again. Right. Ma tovu, ma tovu, ma tovu alecha Yaakov, Mishnotecha Yisrael, Mishnotecha Yisrael, Vani berov chastecha avovetecha, Estachave, Estachave, Elecha Kochecha, Meiratecha, Elecha Kochecha, Meiratecha. Adonai ahavti me'om betecha, U'makom mishkan kavodecha, Vani estachave v'echra evrecha lifnei Adonai osi. Vani tefilati lecha Adonai et ratzon Elohim berov chastecha, aneni bemet yishecha.
Chag Sameach. Thank you, Judith, for welcoming us to our morning service. We are going to use our machzor for this festival morning. You find the link for the machzor in the YouTube live chat and also in our chat here. And I will in between also announce from time to time the page numbers of our regular Siddur if you have neither of the machzor copies in front of you. The theme of this festival is wonderfully highlighted in the first reading, which we can find on page 150, speaking about the revelation. God, we await the renewal of your revelation. As our ancestors stood in the pastures of the foot of Mount Sinai, we stand before the scrolls in this synagogue. We look up towards the light of your presence and speak our prayer. As you bring on the harvest in the fields to provide us with food for sustenance and flowers for joy, prosper the seed of goodness you planted within us. Bring on our harvest of holiness and kindness. We know the consequences of your service and the suffering it can bring, but we are willing to be your hands working to redeem the world and bring your blessings to all its peoples. God, we stand before you in this synagogue, on Zoom and on YouTube, ready to renew your revelation. And there is a wonderful poem by Naomi Shemer, which I am going to sing now for all of us, which speaks of hope, but also of the land of milk and honey. Al hatvash ve'al ha'oketz, al chama ve'hamatok, al biteinu hatinoket, shmo Eli hatov, al ha'esh ha'mevo'eret, al ha'mayim hazakim, al ha'ish hashav habayta, min ha'mechakim, al kol ele, shmona li Eli hatov, al hadvash ve'al ha'oketz, al chama ve'hamatok, al nata akob netuha, al tishkach et hatikva, hashiveni ve'ashuva, el haaretz hatova, shmo Eli al ze habayit, al hagan al hachoma, mi yagon mi pachad peta, וממלחמה שמור על המעט שיש לי, על האור ועל הטוב, על הברית שלו בשבילו, ושנאסף על כל אלה, על כל אלה, שמונה לי אלי הטוב, על הדבש ועל העוקץ, על המה והמתוק. מרשרש אילן ברוח, מרחוק נושר כבוד, משאלות ליבי בחושך, נרשם הוד אשב, אנא שמור לי על כל אלה, ועל אהובי נפשי, על השקט, על הבטחי, ועל זה השיר, על כל אלה, על כל אלה, שמונה לי אלי הטוב, על הדבש ועל העוקץ, על המה והמתוק. On all these, please watch over them for me, my God, on the honey and on the sting, on the bitter and the sweet. And so we do a little jump forward in our Machzorim, in our prayer books, on page 192 in the Machzor and 204 in the regular prayer book 192. We have Yishtabach, which will open for us the section of the Shema reading.
ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ, כי לך נאה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו לעולם ועד. שיר ושבחה, קדושה ומלכות, ברכות והודאות לשמך הגדול והקדוש, ומעולם ועד עולם אתה אל. ברוך אתה אדוני, בורא כל הנשמות, ריבון כל המעשים, מלך העולמים.
And we'll turn to the Baruch Hu, still on page 192. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, יוצא אור ובורא חושך, עושה שלום ובורא את הכל. הכל יודוך והכל ישבחוך והכל יאמרו אין קדוש כאדוני. המאיר לעולם כולו וליושבי ובטובו, מחדש בכל יום תמיד מעשה וראשית. מה רבו מעשיך אדוני, כולם בחוכמה עשית, מלאה הארץ קנייניך. המלך המרומם לבדו מאז, המשובח והמפואר והמתנשא מימות עולם. And on page 195, everlasting God, in your great mercy, have mercy upon us, source of our strength, rock of our protection, shield of our safety, our true protector. Baruch ata Adonai, yotzer ha'ma'orot. Ahava rabba ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu. With deep love you have loved us, and with great and overflowing tenderness you have taken pity on us. Source of our life and our sovereign, show us compassion because of your own greatness and because of our ancestors who trusted in you. For you taught them rules of life to do your will with their whole heart. Let our eyes see the light of your teaching and our hearts embrace your commands. Give us integrity to love you and fear you, so shall we never lose our self-respect, nor be put to shame, for you are the power which works to save us. You choose us from all peoples and tongues, and in your love drew us near to your own greatness, to honor you, to declare your unity, and to love you. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Together we reconfirm our commitment to the eternal by reciting the Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shiftecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech u'v'shochbecha u'v'kumecha u'kshatam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha u'chtaftam al mezuzot beitecha u'v'sha'arecha. Page 199 we have 203 we have a special reading for Shavuot. Moses was winding the flock of his father-in-law Yethro, priest of Midian. Is that? Oh, we have an honor for that. No. He led the flock along the side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Eternal appeared to him and in the flame of the burning bush. Moses notices that although the bush was on fire, it was not being burned up. So he said to himself, I must go across to see the wonderful sight. Why does not the bush burn away? Then the Eternal, seeing that Moses had turned aside to look, called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses answered, Yes, I am here, Hineni. God said, Come no nearer. Take off your sandals. The place where you are standing is holy ground. And continued, I am the God your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Moses covered his face, for he was afraid to gaze upon God. On page 208, we have the concluding blessing for the Shema reading. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Yisrael, ve'amarta alehem ve'asu lahem tzitzit, al kanfei vigdehem ledorotam, ve'natenu al tzitzit hakanav b'titechelet, ve'haya lachem letzitzit, uritem oto, uzachtem et kol mitzvot Adonai va'asitem otam, ve'lo taturu acharei levavachem ve'acharei enechem, asher atem zonim achareihem. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קידושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת. And on page 210 we have emet, the confirmation that all the words are true. Your word is true forever. It is certain for us. It is firm, accepted, and good. It is true that the Eternal is our sovereign, the strength of Jacob, the defender of our safety. God endures from generation to generation. God's rule and faithfulness stands firm forever. It is true that you are the Eternal, our God, and God of our ancestors, who rescues and delivers us. So were you ever known? There is no God besides you. Ezrad avotenu ve'imotenu atahu me'olam. It is you who always helped our ancestors in every generation. You were the shield and savior for them and their children after them. Happy indeed are those who hear the commands and set your teaching and your word upon their hearts. It is true that you are the first, and that you are the last, and besides you we have no sovereign who rescues and saves us. And so we
Israel, Kuma Bezrat Israel, Go'aleinu Adonai, Tzvaot Shemo, Kadosh Israel, Baruch Ata Adonai, Gal Yisrael, Gal Yisrael, Yisrael.
So we turn to the Amidah, page 219 in our regular Sidurim and 210 in our Machzor. May the Eternal open our lips that our mouth may declare God's praise.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham ve'Elohei Sarah, Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Rivka, Elohei Yaakov ve'Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Hanora El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim Koneh Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot ve'Imahot, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ושרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות ומדו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים.
נעריצך ונקדישך כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר,
קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלך כל הארץ כבודו.
כבודו מלא עולם, משרתיו שואלים זה לזה, איה מקום כבודו, לעומתם ברוך יאמרו.
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו.
הוא יפן ברחמים ויחון עם המחדים, שמו ערב ובוקר בכל יום תמיד, פעמיים באהבה שמה אומרים.
שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד.
אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו, שנית לעיני כל חי להיות לכם לאלוהים.
אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
ובדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור,
ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון לדור ודור. הללויה.
לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך. ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, קדושתך נקדיש. ושברך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש, לעולם לעולם ועד. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך. כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש, האל הקדוש, האל הקדוש. אתה וחטאנו מכל העמים, אהבת אותנו ורצית בנו ורוממתנו מכל הלשונות, וקידשתנו במצוותיך וקרבתנו מלכנו לעבודתך, ושמך הגדול והקדוש עלינו קראת, ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה, מועדים לשמחה, חגים וזמנים לששון. את יום חג השבועות הזה, זמן מתן תורתנו, מקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, יעלה ויבוא ויגיע ויראה וירצה וישמע ויפקד ויזכר זיכרוננו ופקדוננו וזיכרון אבותינו ואמותינו וזיכרון משיח בן דוד עבדך, וזיכרון ירושלים עיר קודשך, וזיכרון כל עמך בית ישראל לפניך, לבלטה ולטובה, לכן ולחסד ולרחמים, לחיים ולשלום. ביום חג השבועות הזה, זוכנו אדוני אלוהינו בו לטובה.
אמן.
ופוקדנו בו לברכה.
אמן.
והושיענו בו לחיים.
אמן.
ובדברי ישוע ורחמים חוס וחוננו כי אליך, הננו כי אל מלך חנון ורחום אתה, והזיהנו אדוני אלוהינו בו את ברכת מועדיך לחיים ולשלום, לשמחה ולששון, כאשר חצית ואמרת לבכנו. קדשנו במצוותיך, שים חלקנו בתורתך, זביענו מטובך, שמחנו בשועתך, ותהה ליבנו לעובדך באמת. והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה וברצון, בשמחה ובששון, מועדי קודשך. וישמחו בך ישראל מקדשי שמך. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש ישראל והזמנים. Be pleased with your people Israel and listen to their prayers. In your great mercy delight in us, so that your presence may rest upon Zion. Our eyes look forward to your return to Zion in mercy. ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו לציון. מודים אנחנו לך שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו לעולם ועד. צורנו צור חיינו, מגן ישענו, אתה הוא לדור ודור. נודה לך ונספר תהילתך על חיינו המסורים בידיך ועל נשמותינו הפקודות לך. ועל ניסיך שבכל יום עמנו, ועל נפלאותיך וטובותיך שבכל עת ערב ובוקר וצהריים. הטוב כי לא חלו רחמך, המרחם כי לא תמו חסדיך, כי מעולם קיווינו לך. And for all these things may your name, our sovereign, be pleased, exalted and honored forever and ever. May every living being thank you. May they praise and bless your great name in truth. For you are the God who saves and helps us. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. And we're on page 218 for Sim Shalom. Sim Shalom, tova uvracha, חיים, חן וחסד, צדקה ורחמים עלינו, ואחינו אבינו כולנו יחד באור פניך, כי באור פניך נתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, תורה וחיים, אהבה וחסד, צדקה ורחמים, ברכה ושלום וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל ברוב עוז ובשלום. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. We'll have a short moment for our private prayers before we conclude the Amidah with Oseh Shalom on page 218 or 234 in our regular Sidurim. Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'kol bnei Adam. Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol ha'olam. And we turn to page 221, and before we enter into the Hallel, we recall the rejoicing of our ancestors in the procession that brought the first fruits of the festival to Zion on Yom HaBikurim, the day of the first ripe fruits on Shavuot. Those who lived near Jerusalem brought fresh figs and grapes, and those who lived far away, dried figs and raisins. An ox with gilded horns, wearing the wreath of olive leaves, led the way. A flute played before them until they came close to the city. The governors and officials came out to meet them, and all the workers of Jerusalem would stand up and salute them, saying, "We welcome you." The flute continued to play before them until they reached the Temple Mount. Even King Agrippa put a basket on his shoulder and walked with it to the temple court. So let's turn to page 224-25 for the Hallel in the Machzor, and page 664 in our regular Sidurim. And I invite now Judith and Patrick to lead us in the Hallel.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לקרוא את ההלל. הללויה, הללויה, הללו עבדי אדוני, הללו את שם אדוני, יהי שם אדוני מבורך, מעתה ועד עולם, ממזרח שמש עד מבואו, בהלל שם אדוני. רמה כל גויים אדוני, על השמיים כבודו, מכאדוני אלוהינו, המגביל לשבת, המשפילי לראות, בשמיים ובארץ, מקימים מעפדה, מאשפות ירים אביון, להושיבים נדיבים, הם נדיבי עמו, מושיבי עקרת הבית, הם הבנים שמחה, הללויה, הללויה, הללויה. בצאת ישראל ממצרים, בית יעקב מעם לועז, בצאת ישראל ממצרים, בית יעקב מעם לועז, הייתה יהודה לקודשו, ישראל ממשלותיו, הים רעב וינוס, הירדן יסוף לאחור, בצאת ישראל ממצרים, בית יעקב מעם לועז. בצאת ישראל ממצרים, בית יעקב מעם לועז. ההרים רקדו כלים, גבעות כבני צאן. מלאך הים כי תנוס, הירדן תיסוף לאחור. בצאת ישראל ממצרים, בית יעקב מעם לועז. בצאת ישראל ממצרים, בית יעקב מעם לועז. ההרים תרקדו כלים, גבעות כבני צאן. מלפני אדון הולי ארץ, מלפני אלוהי יעקב. בצאת ישראל ממצרים, בית יעקב מעם לועז. בצאת ישראל ממצרים, בית יעקב מעם לועז. מלפני אדון הולי ארץ, מלפני אלוהי יעקב. ההופכי הצורג המים, הלביש למינו מים. בצאת ישראל ממצרים, בית יעקב מעם לועז. בצאת ישראל ממצרים, בית יעקב מעם לועז.
לא לנו אדוני לא לנו, כי לשמך תן כבוד, על חסדך, על עמיתך. למה יאמרו הגויים, איה נא אלוהיכם, ואלוהינו בשמיים, כל אשר חפץ עשה בהם כסף וזהב, מעשה ידי אדם. פה להם ולא ידברו, עיניים להם ולא יראו, אוזניים להם ולא ישמעו, אף להם ולא יריחון, ידיהם ולא ימשון, רגליהם ולא יחלהו, לא יהיו בגרונם. כמוהם יהיו עושיהם, כל אשר בוטח בהם. ישראל בטח באדוני, עזרם ומגינם הוא. בית אחרון בטחו באדוני, עזרם ומגינם הוא. ירא אדוני, בטחו באדוני, עזרם ומגינם הוא. אדוני זכרנו יברך.
יברך את בית ישראל, יברך את בית אהרון, יברך יראי אדוני, הקטנים עם הגדולים. יוסף אדוני עליכם, עליכם באבניכם, ברוכים אתם לאדוני. עושה שמיים בארץ, השמיים שמיים לאדוני, והארץ נתן לבני אדם. לא המתים יהללויה, ולא כל ידי דומה, ואנחנו נברך מעתה ועד עולם, מעתה ועד עולם, הללויה.
אהבתי כי ישמע אדוני את קולי תחנוני, כי ייטע אוזנו לי ובימי אקרא. עפפוני חבלי מוות ומצרי שאול מצאוני, שרב יגון אמצא. ובשם אדוני אקרא, אנא אדוני מלטה נפשי. חנון אדוני וצדיק ואלוהינו מרחם. שומר פתאים אדוני דלותי ולהי יושיע. שובי נפשי למנוחה היא, כי אדוני גמל עלי היא. כי הלצת נפשי ממוות, את עיני מדמעה, את רגלי מדחי. אתהלך לפני אדוני בארצות החיים. האמנתי כי אדבר, אני עניתי מאוד. אני אמרתי וחופשי כל האדם כוזב. מה אשיב לאדוני כל תגמולו היא עלי? כוס ישועת עושה ושם אדוני אקרא, נדרי לאדוני אשלם נגדנה לכל עמו. יקר בעיני אדוני המפת להסידיו. אנא אדוני כי אני עבדך, אני עבדך בן אמתך, פיתחת למוסרי. לך אזבח צבע תודה ובשם אדוני אקרא. נדרי לאדוני אשלם נגדנה לכל עמו, בארצות בית אדוני בתוככי ירושלים. הללויה.
הללו את אדוני כל גויים, שבחוהו כל האומים, כי גבר עלינו חסדו ואמת אדוני לעולם. הללויה. הודו לאדוני כי טוב, כי לעולם חסדו. יאמנה ישראל.
Min hametza karatia anani b'mechavya. Adonai li lo ira, ma yaseh li Adam. Adonai li ba'ozrai v'ani ereh b'sonai. Tov lachasot b'Adonai mibtor b'Adam. Tov lachasot b'Adonai mibtor bin divim. Kol goyim svavuni b'shem Adonai ki amilam. Sabuni gam svavuni b'shem Adonai ki amilam. Sabuni kidevorim dorchu ke'esh kotzim b'shem Adonai ki amilam. Dachod yichitani linpol v'Adonai azarani. Ozi v'zimratya v'ahili l'shua. Kol rina v'shua b'cholei tzodikim. Yemin Adonai osachayel, Yemin Adonai romema, Yemin Adonai osachayel. Lo amut ki echye v'asaper maseya. Yaso Yisrani yav lamavet lo natanani.
Petroli share tzedek avov amodeya. Petroli share tzedek avov amodeya. Tzadikim yavovo, zehashal Adonai. Tzadikim yavovo. Odecha ki anitani v'tehili lishua. הייתה לראש פינה, מאת אדוני הייתה זאת, היא נפלאת בעינינו. זה היה מסע אדוני, נגילה ונשמחה בו. אנא אדוני הושיענה. Hoshiana, Ana Adonai Hatzlichana, Ana Adonai Hatzlichana. Baruch haba b'shem Adonai, berachnuchem מבית Adonai. El Adonai vaya elanu Yishu chag bavotim atkanot hamizbeach Eliata ve'odeka Elohai aroma mekka Hadol Adonai ki tov ki leolam chasdo.
Yehallelujah Adonai Eloheinu kol ma'asecha, v'chasidecha tzedikim odzei ritzonecha, v'chol amcha veit Yisrael berina yodu v'yivaruchu v'yishabuchu v'yifaru v'romamu v'yaritzu v'yakdishu v'yamlichu et shimcha malkeinu. Ki lacha tov lohodot u'leshimcha na'el zamer, ki me'olam v'ad olam ata el. Baruch ata Adonai, melech muhulal batishbachot.
Amen. It's always beautiful. If we would not have festivals, we need to invent them only that we can have the Hallel, one of the liturgical, really special pieces we have in our services. We will now turn to the reading of the Book of Ruth, which is perhaps one of the books we can find in our Tanakh that is not speaking of war. And I think that is something we, yesterday when we looked into the Book of Ruth and discussed how many facets it has, this is also one of the things we often forget. This is a book of peace. It is a book of commitment, and it is a book where the individual brings tikkun into the world, and we see no destruction, which I think is something very beautiful, and therefore it is worth to read it in its full length. Unfortunately, because a little bit of the time and the circumstances, we will have a shortened version which will be read by Josie, but nevertheless, I hope you can enjoy its words, its wisdom. So we turn to page 239 for the blessing, and then Josie will read for us the book, the shortened version.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al mikra Megillah. It came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons Machlon and Kilion. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. And they took wives of the women of Moab. The name of one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth, and they dwelled there about 10 years. Both Machlon and Kilion died, and the woman was bereft of her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab that the Eternal had visited his people and given them bread. And Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Eternal deal kindly with you." And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth held fast to her. And Naomi said, "Behold, your sister-in-law is gone back to her people and to her gods. Go back you after your sister-in-law." And Ruth said, "Do not entreat me to leave you or to keep from following you, for wherever you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, will I die, and there will I be buried. The Eternal do so to me, and more also, even if death parts me from you." So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her, who returned from the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a man of wealth, and his name was Boaz. Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me now go to the field and glean ears of grain after him in whose sight I shall find favour." And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, "The Eternal be with you." And they answered him, "The Eternal bless you." Then Boaz said to his servant, "Whose maiden is this?" And the servant said, "It is the Moabite maiden who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab." Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Do not go to glean in another field, nor go away from here, but stay here, close to my maidens. Let your eyes be on the field that they reap, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men that they shall not touch you?" Then she fell on her face and said to him, "Why have I found favour in your eyes?" And Boaz answered and said to her, "It has been fully told to me all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, and how you have left your father and your mother and the land of your birth, and have come to a people which you did not know before. The Eternal will recompense you." Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, shall I not seek a home for you, that it may be well with you? Now is not Boaz, with whose maidens you were, our relative? Behold, he winnows barley tonight in the threshing floor. Wash yourself, therefore, and put your garment upon you, and go down. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. And it shall be when he lies down that you shall mark the place where he shall lie." And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. And she came softly and uncovered his feet, and laid herself down. And he said, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, your maidservant. Spread your skirt over your maidservant, for you are next of kin." And he said, "Blessed be you to the Eternal, my daughter, for your last loyal kindness is greater than the first one, because you have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to you all that you ask. Although it is true that I am your close relative, there is a relative closer than I am. Remain this night, and it shall be in the morning that if he will do the duty of the next of kin for you, well, let him do the kinsman's duty. But if he will not do the duty of a kinsman to you, then I will do the duty of a kinsman for you, as the Eternal lives. Then Boaz went up to the gate and sat down there. And behold, the next of kin of whom Boaz had spoken came by. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city. And he said to the next of kin, Naomi, who has returned from the country of Moab, is selling a parcel of land, which was our brother Elimelech's. But you must buy it also from Ruth the Moabite, the wife of the dead, to restore the name of the dead to his inheritance. And the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I harm my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption for yourself. And Boaz said to the elders and to all the people, You are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's from the hand of Naomi, and also Ruth the Moabite have I bought to be my wife, to restore the name of the dead to his inheritance, so that the name of the dead shall not be cut off from among his brothers. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife, and the Eternal gave her conception, and she bore a son. And the women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, A son has been born to Naomi, and they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shechalak mechachmato lireav.
Thank you very much. I think most of the aspects of the book were really highlighted in the shorter version, but one thing I think yesterday in our shiur with Rabbi Tony, unfortunately was not in this reading, but how wonderful really the idea is represented in this book, that it is not, or on Shavuot we speak a lot about the chosen people of God, but that this doesn't mean that this is an exclusive, elevated bunch of people, but actually that this is a group that lives in context with the world around, and that it also needs the contribution by every single individual in this world to grow and to prosper, and sometimes also to a little bit shaken up and to find back to its own roots. And I think Ruth did that in her generation, and I hope we will have many, many other Ruth in our generation to do the same for us, so that our people can grow and prosper. We will now turn to the Torah service, which is, of course, a highlight on the Shavuot Festival as we celebrate the giving of the Torah. The Torah itself is in the center of our festival. And on page 261, we have a short reading which states...
By Rachel, thank you.
Thank you.
If God had only freed us from slavery in Egypt, it would have been enough. But our release from bondage was only a beginning, to prepare us for the covenant which awaited us on the slopes of Sinai. There our ancestors accepted the yoke of the commandments, the call to become a kingdom of priests and a holy people. God did not choose us because we were the greatest of peoples, but because we were the least of them. Refugees from the might of Pharaoh, alone in a wilderness, living in tents. God chose us not for power or might, but for God's own purpose, to be a blessing in the world and lead its peoples to peace and justice. Today, the commandments of God challenge us, as they challenged our ancestors on the slopes of Sinai. Are we ready to share their reply?
And just the little quote, the acceptance, only the acceptance.
Then Moses took the book of the covenant and read it aloud to the people, and they said, all that God has spoken we will do, and we will obey.
Thank you. And so we will open the ark and take out the Torah Scrolls, and Judith will lead us. Give me just a second to prepare our lectern so that we can find then a space for the Torah Scrolls. We will take out 2 scrolls this morning. one for the reading from Exodus and one from Dvarim.
En kamacha v'Elohim Adonai ben kamasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim umemshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch leolam va'et Adonai oz le'amo yiten Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom Av harachamim heitiva v'ertzoncha et Zion tivne chomot Yerushalayim ki v'cha levat batachnu melech melech eram benisa melech melech eram benisa adon olamim adon olamim
Vayhi ben Aaron vayom Moshe kuma Adonai ve'yafutzo olbecha ve'yanusu mesanecha mipanecha ki mitzion tetzeh Torah ki mitzion tetzeh Torah odama Adonai mirushalayim
Adonai, Adonai, Erachum v'chanun, Erech apayim, Rav chesed ve'emet, Notze chesed la'alafim, Notze avon ba'fesha, B'chata v'nakeh. Adonai, Adonai, Erachum v'chanun, Erech apayim, V'rav chesed ve'emet, Notze chesed la'alafim, Notze avon ba'fesha, V'chata v'nakeh. Adonai, Adonai, Erachum v'chanun, Erech apayim, V'rav chesed ve'emet, Notze chesed la'alafim, Notze avon ba'fesha, V'chata v'nakeh.
Baruch shenatan Torah Torah Baruch shenatan Torah Torah le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo Gadol Adonai Hiti Uneromema Shemo Yachdav Lecha Adonai HaGedula VeHaGvura VeHaTiferet VeHaNetzach VeHaHod Ki chol bashamayim בשמיים ובארץ. לך אדוני המלאכה, והמתנשא לכל לראש. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו, השתחוו להדרום רגליו, קדוש הוא. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו, השתחוו להקדשו, כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו, כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו, אלוהינו. Thank you. And perhaps while we are checking that the scrolls are on the right place, you may be seated, and we can perhaps use the moment to also sing another song so that we just can prepare. How's about with Al Shlosha Devarim? Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Haolam Omed. Al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Haolam Omed. Al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Thank you very much, and we will do the Hagbah a little bit later because we just found the piece, but perhaps we can now have or start with the Torah reading. This reading for this morning is from the first scroll is Exodus chapter 19. We begin with verse 16 and end with the end of chapter 19, and then the second aliyah will be the Decalogue, chapter 20. In the Masurim, you can turn to page 448, and we have the English translation read by Chaim.
For the first aliyah.
Yeah, for the first aliyah.
On the third day, at the break of dawn, there was thunder and lightning, and a thick cloud about the mountain, and prolonged blast on the horn. All the people in the camp shuddered. Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet the Almighty, and they took their stand at the base of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was all smoke, because the Eternal had come down upon it in fire. The smoke rose up like the smoke of a furnace, and all the mountain shuddered violently. The sound of the horn grew ever stronger and louder. Moses spoke, and the Almighty answered him by a voice. The Eternal came down upon Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain. The Eternal called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. The Eternal said to Moses, "Go down, warn the people not to break through towards the Eternal to gaze, lest many of them die. Even the priests who come near to the Eternal must keep themselves apart for holiness, lest the Eternal break out against them." But Moses said to the Eternal, "The people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you have already warned us, saying, 'Put bounds about the mountain and set it apart as holy.'" Then the Eternal said to him, "Leave, go down, then come back up, you and Aaron with you. But the priests and the people must not break through to come up, lest the Eternal break out against them." Then Moses went down to the people and spoke to them.
Yamod, Yamod, Chaim ben Chava.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bahar banu mikol ha'amim, ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
אמן. ויהי ביום השלישי בהיות הבוקר, ויהי קולות וברקים, וענן כבד על ההר, וקול שופר חזק מאוד, ויחרד כל העם אשר במחנה. ויוצא משה את העם לקראת האלוהים מן המחנה, ויתייצבו בתחתית ההר, והסיני עשן כולו מפני אשר ירד עליו אדוני באש, ויעל עשנו כאשן הכבישון, ויחרד כל המאוד, ויהי קול השופר הולך וחזק מאוד. משה ידבר והאלוהים יעננו בקול. וירד אדוני על הר סיני אל ראש ההר, ויקרא אדוני למשה אל ראש ההר, ויעל משה, ויאמר אדוני אל משה, רד העד בעם, פן יחרזו אל אדוני לראות, ונפל ממנו רב. וגם הכהנים הניגשים אל אדוני יתקדשו, פן יפרוץ בהם אדוני. ויאמר משה אל אדוני, לא יוכל העם לעלות אל הר סיני, כי אתה העדותה בנו לאמור, הגבל את ההר וקידשתו. ויאמר אליו אדוני, לך רד ועלית אתה ואהרון עמך, והכהנים והעם אל יהרזו לעלות אל אדוני, פן יפרוץ בם. וירד משה אל העם, ויאמר עליהם.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. And we're now coming closer to this very special moment in our reading and we all together stand at Mount Sinai, and therefore let's have first the reading of the Akdamut by Rabbi Tony Hammond, and then we'll follow in the procedure.
Before I read the Ten Commandments, I ask your permission to say some words. I tremble as I speak in the presence of the one who carries the world through time. Endless is the power of God. If all the skies were parchment and all the forests pens, if all the seas were ink and the pools filled with water, if the people all were scribes ready to write the words, still they could not set down the glory of heaven's ruler, the sovereign of the world. A feast is prepared for the righteous. May you who hear this prayer be placed in such company that you may be worthy to sit among the greatest, because you kept the Ten Commandments. Exalted is God without end, who accepted us and chose us and gave us Torah.
O God, make the words of your Torah sweet in our mouths and in the mouth of your people, the family of Israel. May we and our children and all children of your people Israel know your name and study your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, our teacher, instructing your people Israel in Torah. Baruch atah Adonai hamelamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. We have a short moment of silence, of private prayers, before we then listen to the Ten Commandments.
When God spoke all these words, I am the eternal your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the camp of slavery. You shall have no other gods but me. You shall not make yourself an idol in the likeness of anything which is in the sky above or on the earth below or in the deeps under the earth. You shall not worship them nor serve them. For I, the eternal your God, am a demanding God, burdening the children down to the third and fourth generations with their father's guilt if they hate me, but showing kindness to thousands of generations if they should love me and keep my commands. You shall not use the name of the eternal your God falsely, for the eternal will not excuse anyone who uses God's name falsely. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. You have 6 days to labor and do all your work, but the seventh shall be a Sabbath for the eternal your God. That day you shall do no work, neither you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your servant man or woman, nor your cattle, nor the stranger who lives in your home. For in 6 days the eternal made heaven and earth, the seas and all that is in them, and the eternal rested on the seventh day. Therefore the eternal blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Respect your father and your mother, so that the days of your life be fulfilled on the land which the eternal your God gives you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false evidence against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his servant, man or woman, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is your neighbor's.
Yamod, Yamod, Harav Natan ben Abraham.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamavorach.
Baruch Adonai hamvorach leolam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bacha banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
אמן. וידבר אלוהים את כל הדברים האלה לאמור, אנוכי אדוני אלוהיך, אשר הוצאתיך מארץ מצרים מבית עבדים. לא יהיה לך אלוהים אחרים על פניו, לא תעשה לך פסל וכל תמונה אשר בשמיים ממעל ואשר בארץ מתחת ואשר במים מתחת לארץ, לא תשתחווה להם ולא תעבדם. כי אנוכי אדוני אלוהיך אלקנה פוקד עוון אבות על בנים, על שלישים ועל רביעים לשונאי, ועשה חסד לאלפים, לאוהבי ולשומרי מצוותי. לא תישא את שם אדוני אלוהיך לשווא, כי לא ינקה אדוני את אשר יישא את שמו לשווא. זכור את יום השבת לקדשו, 6 ימים תעבוד ועשית כל מלאכתך, ויום השביעי שבת לאדוני אלוהיך. לא תעשה כל מלאכה אתה ובנך וביתך, עבדך ואמתך ובהמתך וגרך אשר בשעריך, כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, את הים ואת כל אשר בם, וינח ביום השביעי. על כן ברך אדוני את יום השבת ויקדשהו. כבד את אביך ואת אמך, למען יאריכון ימיך על האדמה אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך. לא תרצח, לא תנאף, לא תגנוב, לא תענה ברעך עד שקר, לא תחמוד בית רעך, לא תחמוד אשת רעך, ויעבדוהו ואמתו ושורו וחמורו וכל אשר לרעך. וכל העם רואים את הקולות ואת הלפידים ואת קול השופר ואת העשן, ויעם וינועו ויעמדו מרחוק, ויאמרו אל משה דבר אתה עמנו ונשמע, ואל ידבר עמנו אלוהים פן נמות. ויאמר משה אל העם אל תיראו, כי לעוון לעשות אתכם בה האלוהים, ובעבור תהיה יראתו על פניכם לבלתי תחטאו. ויעמוד העם מרחוק, ומשה ניגש אל הערפל אשר שם האלוהים.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
And please remain in the standing position as I will now do the Hagba'ah, which I skipped beforehand.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל. תורה ציווה לנו משה מורשה קהילת יעקב. הייל תמים דרכו אמרת אדוני צירופה. מגן לך
Thank you. And we're in a so perhaps we can have the translation of the next reading, of the third reading. Thank you, Rabbi Tony.
I'd like to invite Anne Clark to read us the third reading, which is from Deuteronomy chapter 16. And it's on page 264 of our Machzor.
In fact, it seems to be on page 489 of my Machzor.
Oh, thank you. It seems that I got a typo here. Thank you very much, Anne, for correcting us.
So on page 489 from Deuteronomy chapter 16, verses 9 to 12, this reading is actually one of the few places in Torah which talks about Shavuot. It's not the same as the Torah reading in the Orthodox tradition, because their Torah reading about Shavuot is all about sacrifices, and ours isn't. You shall count for yourself 7 weeks. From when the sickle is put to the standing grain, you shall count 7 weeks. Then you shall observe the festival of weeks to the Eternal your God. You shall give a free will offering according to the amount with which the Eternal your God has blessed you. You shall rejoice before the Eternal your God, you and your son and your daughter and your servant, man and woman, and the Levite who is in your settlements, and the stranger, orphan and widow who are amongst you, in the place where the Eternal your God chooses to establish God's name. Remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and take care to keep these laws.
Thank you, Anne. Rabbi, whenever you're ready, I will now call Anne to read the blessings for us. Tamod, Tamod, Bella bat Mordechai v'Esther.
Baruchu et Adonai hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher bacha banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Shiva Shavuot tispoch mehachel hermesh bakama techel espoch Shiva Shavuot va'asita Chag Shavuot l'Adonai Elohecha misad nidvad yadecha asher titen ka'asher yivarecha Adonai Elohecha v'samachta livnei Adonai Elohecha אתה ובנך וביתך ועבדך ואמתך והלוי אשר בשעריך והגר והיתום והאלמנה אשר בקרבך במקום אשר יבחר אדוני אלוהיך לשכן שמו שם וזכרת כי עבד הייתה במצרים ושמרת ועשית את החוקים האלה.
ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
Amen. And we will also do a Hagbah for the second scroll. And once again, I invite Judith to sing for us.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל, על פי אדוני ביד משה.
And we will have first a blessing for our congregational family members who are not well, who are sick. And I just try to find my blessing. Yeah. And if you have names to add to the list of people you are thinking of who are not well and hopefully will be restored to full strength of body and soul, please add them either in the shed or just have them in your name. Say them out loud in your heart, and we are sure God will hear them and will think with us together of them. מי שברך אבותינו ואמותינו אברהם יצחק ויעקב שרה רבקה רחל ולאה הוא יברך את החולים. הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עליהם להחלמם ולרפאותם ולהחזיקם וישלח להם מהרה רפואה שלמה מן השמיים, רפואת הנפש, רפואת הגוף, השתה בעגלה ובזמן קריב ונאמר אמן. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abram, Isaac and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel and Leah bless and heal those who are ill. May the blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. And may God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit, to which we say, Amen. And I invite now our community blessings, and Stella has...
I'm going to read them for us while I presume you're going to address the scroll, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our God, whose dominion is everlasting, we ask you to bless Queen Elizabeth and all the royal family and to guide the government of this country. Help us to be good citizens, working together for justice and peace at home and abroad. Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessing of the state of Israel and all who live there. Give wisdom and understanding to its leaders and friendship and compassion to the people, so there may be lasting peace on its borders and in its homes. Soon may your promise be fulfilled, for your Torah shall come out of Zion and the word of God from Jerusalem. As you blessed our fathers Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, and our mothers Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel and Leah, bless our own congregation, all other congregations gathered together in prayer, and everyone who responds to the needs of the community. We ask you to listen to our prayers and look kindly on us, lifting the burden of anxiety of those who are troubled, sending relief to those in pain or anxiety, and helping us to help each other. Amen. We're saying, just thinking, just as we move into Yizkor, of all the years of which Marcus read us the Ten Commandments over the High Holy Days, and how many other good people we have to remember in the coming Yizkor service.
Yes. Right. So,
Wonderful.
we'll first return the scroll into the ark, both scrolls, of course, and then we will have a short word of Torah from my side, and then we will continue with the Yizkor part that will be opened according to our prayer book, our Machzor, the Elenu. But first, please turn to page 282 for returning the scroll into the ark, and I will just do my little miracle by spotlighting everyone. Just give me a short moment. Spotlight. Ya'alenu et Shem Adonai, ki nizkar shemo levado, hodo al eretz v'shamayim, hayaharem keren le'amo, tehina levot ha'te'ah, eretz ha'et al krovo, hallelujah, hallelujah.
ובנוחה יומא שובה אדוני רבבות אלפי ישראל קומה אדוני למנוחתך אתה ואהרון עוזך כהניך ילבשו צדק בחסידיך ירננו בעוון דוד עבדך אל תשב פני משיחך כי לכך טוב נתתי לכם תורתי אל תעזבו עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה ותומכי המאושר דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום. השיבנו אדוני אלוהיך ונשובה חדש ימינו כקדם חדש ימינו כקדם.
Thank you very much. You may be seated, and I will give you all a short moment just to take a deep breath and also to reflect on the words we just heard as part of our Torah reading this morning. On Shavuot, according to what we spoke before, we mark the moment when God's voice spoke at Mount Sinai. We heard that in our Torah reading, that the mount was on fire, literally and that there was the voice of God coming and be audible to every single individual. So the sages in the Midrash tells us that each person who stood at Mount Sinai actually heard God's voice differently. The Midrash Tanchuma states, the voice of God at Mount Sinai was understood by everyone only according to their ability to understand. The old people understood it according to their ability. The young people understood it according to their ability. Infants understood it according to their ability. Even Moses says, the Midrash, understood the voice of Sinai according to his own ability. There's something profoundly beautiful about this idea, that there is not one single way to understand revelation. To understand Torah, that in fact there are as many ways as there are those willing to listen to that voice. No one has a monopoly on the truth, and this particularly appeals to us as Reform Jews or liberal Jews. Traditionally, we assert the right to understand Torah according to our own intellect. To paraphrase one of the founders of Reform Judaism, Rabbi Samuel Holdheim said, Rabbi Akiva understood Torah in his way, and I understand it in mine. The principle that Torah is filtered through the prism of our lives and experience is most gratifying, particularly in an age where we assert that we are sovereign selves and are entitled to a spiritual life that conforms to our values. But, there is always a but, I think. But what if the filter, the prism through which we experience Torah or the word of Torah, what if that filter is made of evil? What if that filter, that prism is engineered out of the sputtering engine of our hatred and intolerance? What if the voice of God we hear, the Sinai we encounter, is filtered through the sieve of ignorance, deceit, superstition and prejudice? We don't need to guess, to imagine, for that is the world we live in. If we live in a time when there is great yearning for meaning, a great yearning for the spiritual end, I believe that we also live in a time when people claim to represent the voice of God, do so through a cloak of ignorance, hatred, prejudice, intolerance, and racism. In a time of Twitter, this is for sure what we can expect. So the voice of God has been used to justify the most extreme hatred and prejudice. Here in London, in Europe, the Middle East, and the US, against women, against people of different color, against immigrants, against people whose skin is dark, against the poor, the rich, against the other. Somehow, those who hate and discriminate do so arrogantly empowered by what they believe is God's voice. We have seen extreme cruelties committed in the name of God's voice. From the kidnapping of young children and forced conversion to imprisonment and death and torture and killing. As Jews, we are not exempt from it. Plenty of Jews justify their seeing hatred of women, of Muslims, of Arabs, of non-Orthodox Jews by claiming that the voice that they hear the voice to which they respond in obedience is the voice of God, the voice they heard at Sinai. It was Rabbi David Hartman of blessed memory who decades ago began to insist that Judaism, which is not guided by compassion, democratic values, and a search for equality, will become corrupted and even evil. Moreover, Rabbi Hartman believed that this view had its roots in the tradition itself. In a passage from the Talmud tractate Yomah, the sages declare that God is a God who insists on truth, and no falsehood may be ascribed to God. For Rabbi Hartman, to ascribe to God's will, to God's voice, anything which causes harm, cruelty, or suffering to another human being is to ascribe falsehood to God, to violate the rabbinic teaching that God insists on truth. He teaches that the truth must include a recognition of the divine dignity in every human being. In Judaism, love for God must lead to love for real people and therefore be authentic. Judaism must also be concerned with equality and compassion and moral behavior. For Rabbi David Hartman, morality and truth is the only prism through which we shall filter God's Sinai's voice. For too many in our time, religion is a license to hate, to discriminate, to persecute, and even to kill. So celebrating the giving of the Torah and our covenant with God, we must continually remind those people and ourselves that those who preach ideas of excluding others do not listen to the authentic voice of Sinai. So may this Shavuot be a sanctuary in our time for us, giving us hope for a world in peace. And may we grow in our understanding of the Torah and our ability to open ourselves to understandings. Chag Sameach. And so let us turn to page 310 in our regular Sidurim and 316 in our Machzorim, where we find the Elenu Prayer, which is a reminder of our duties in this world and that we have it in our hands to repair the world. Elenu leshabeach ladon hakol, lated gidula leotze bereshit, asher bachab. It was Judith, sorry.
That's all right. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבהי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום בהשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד.
על כן נקווה לך, אדוני אלוהינו, לראות מהרה בתפארת עוזך, להעביר גילולים מן הארץ והאלילים קרות יכרתון, לתקן עולם במלכות שדי, וכל בני בשר יקחו בשמך, להבנות אליך כל ראשי ארץ, יכירו וידעו כל יושבי תבל, כי לך תכרע כל ברך, תשבע כל לשון. לפניך אדוני אלוהינו יכירו ויפולו, ולכבוד שמך יקר יתנו, ויקבלו כולם את עול מלכותך, ותמלוך עליהם מהרה לעולם ועד, כי המלכות שלך היא לעולמי עד תמלוך בכבוד. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. And so please turn to page 337 for our memorial service. And we have lit a Yizkor candle right before the beginning of Shavuot to remember those in our congregation and beyond. And we are on 337. We remember all those who gave us life and freedom, who taught us Torah, and who gave us guidance on our own journey through life. We are grateful to God for their presence and example. They showed us how to live without regret and receive with good grace. They taught us to tell the truth to others and not lie to ourselves. They encouraged us to shoulder responsibilities and face our failures without excuses. They taught us to discern the unseen soul in our neighbor and in ourselves. We have a reading on page 337.
Yes, I invite Julian to read page 337 and the top paragraph of 339 as well. Thank you, Julian.
May God give them their reward. When a person dies, neither silver nor gold nor precious stones accompany them, only Torah and good deeds. For it is said, when you walk, it shall lead you in this world. When you lie down, it shall watch over you in the grave. When you wake, it shall speak with you in the world to come. Frail men and women, their days are like grass. They blossom like a flower in the field, but the breeze passes over it, and it is gone, and its place knows it no more. Those who fear God knew a love that lasts forever and ever, faithful to their children's children. If only people were wise and understood this. When they think about their life, people die, they take nothing away. Their glory does not follow them down. Mark the honest and watch the upright, for the end of such a person is peace. God redeems the soul of those who serve. None who shelter in God come to harm. We remember our families, our friends, and our teachers who were dear to us, and who have passed beyond the frontiers of this life. Think of all those who we love and those we respect. The holiness of this day eases our loss and purifies our memory. God, we give you thanks for all you gave us through them. They live in the light of eternity, and they live in us, for we are shaped by them. From their lives we learnt lessons of love and courage. Through their death we glimpse eternity. In our hearts we name them, who gave us their wisdom. They shine for us like the stars of heaven. God comfort us by their memory, and hallow us through the good they taught us. You have led them into eternity. May you join us together gathering of life. May God remember.
We have a short moment of those we remember before we continue with the Ilmale Rachamim on page 338. Ilmale Rachamim Shochen Mameromim Hamtze Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShekhinah Malot Kiddushim Oteorim Kezohar Harakia Masirim Enishmot Kol Elu Shemazru Lano Mitoratam Veshehalu Leolamam Ana Baal Harachamim Tasirem Beseta Knafecha Leholamim Uvtro B'tzro Achayim Et Nishmatam Adonai hu nachalatam v'yanuchu v'shalom al mishkavam v'nomar Amen. God, full of compassion, whose presence is over us, grant perfect rest beneath the shelter of your presence with the holy and pure on high, who shine as the lights of heaven, to all those who handed to us their Torah and have gone to their eternal home. Source of mercy, cover them in the shelter of your wings forever, and bind their souls into the gathering of life. It is God who is the heritage. May they be at peace in their place of rest. We will now turn to page 318 in the Mahzor 316 for the Kaddish. And I would like just to use this moment also to remind you that we unfortunately had to mourn for death in our congregation, and the funerals will be, or the memorial services will be in the coming days. For Nick Tash, you all received an email with the details of how you can log into the Zoom for the funeral itself or the memorial itself, and also the Shiva services in the evening. And the details for Noni Schneider will be shared with you in the coming hours as soon as this is confirmed, if it is Wednesday or Thursday. Also, we remember together with Stanford Meyer O'Reilly the death of his friend Jerome Friedman, and we, Chaim and I, together with our friends in South Africa, mourn the untimely death of Greg Allenby, a close friend of all of us in our circle, and it is such a tragedy that we have lost this wonderful soul in our midst, but the memory of him, as of all those who are dear to you, are eternally with us, and they will give us strength in times we miss them most. We also use this moment to think of those who have died recently because of the struggle and the terror in Israel. May also their memories be for a blessing. We are with their families and we share their pain. Page 318, Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shomer rabba, be'alma divrach yichote v'amlich malchote, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon, v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman karif, v'meru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithada v'yithaleh v'yithalal, shmei dekudesha berichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirchata, tushbachata v'nechamata, de'amiran be'alema v'yimeru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'akol Yisrael v'yimeru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. עלינו והכל ישראל וכל בני אדם ואמרו Amen. And I hand to Stella.
Yes, just a very few announcements in comparison to last night. Tomorrow, Tuesday at noon on Zoom, and you have had the link, I hope, you can welcome to our Getting to Know You, where Ella Raz Road will be talking about her talk of Pioneers in Search of a Dream, a tale of a real Zionist, Ukraine to Eretz Yisrael, growing up in my grandfather's Bilu village. Actually looks absolutely fascinating, and she talks a good talk always, so this is going to be well worth joining us for. On Sunday the 23rd, on Zoom, Kim Ismay will be singing songs for the show, from the shows. You may know Kim. She's been in many West End musicals. She was in one of the very first Mamma Mia's with quite a prominent part, and it has a wonderful voice. Please register for this. It's our first fundraising event for a very long time. It will be on Zoom, but you will get the, it's a modest fee, by the way, to register, but will, as I say, make a lovely evening for all of us. You've actually, as Rabbi Adrian has said, got information about Nick Tausch's funeral and Shiva prayers. And we're also pleased to announce that we have two new representatives on the Board of Deputies, Martin Raven and Lawrence Jacobson, but even more to the point, to thank Sharon Cousins and Mike Friedman for all their work on the board in the last 3 years. People do work in the background. I think the noise is about the Board of Deputies. We see just the announcements, but the work on the school's visits and all the other things that they've been linking in Israel and all the other pieces that the board do, I remember from a very long time ago, are the worthy bits that we see and hear very little about. So we thank them for their service and look forward to Martin and Lawrence, I hope, giving us an update of what their impressions of the board have been in the near future. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much. And before we turn to the Kiddush for this festival morning, I invite one last time for today, Judith, to sing for us Ein Keloheinu, and this also comes with a very big thank you to Judith and Patrick for being so active in our service, leading us in the Hallel, and for Judith for being our Chazanit this morning, but also a big thank you to all of you who joined us this morning here on Zoom and on YouTube to create a minyan, and it worked, so it's wonderful. So we were a little bit concerned if everyone is already awake after a long night of study, but you are here, and this is wonderful that you joined us this morning in reaffirming our covenant with the eternal and this wonderful service. Thank you to everyone who contributed, who read, who had an aliyah, an honor, honoring us as a community by being here. So to page 320 for Ein Keloheinu, 306 in the regular Siddur.
Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kamalkeinu, Ein Kamoshienu, Micheloheinu, Michadonenu, Michamalkeinu, Michamoshienu. Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu.
And page 372. Vayidaber Moshe et Moadei Adonai el bnei Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. We have some of our festival challah left. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Petei avon. And thank you once again to all of you. And Chaim will now bid farewell to the people who are on YouTube.
Bye-bye.
And then we are going back to gallery view, and we'll have a short moment of our little schmooze here.